Let's go on to another question. This one from Olivia Parsons, please. Olivia Parsons.
With the Labour Party currently tearing itself apart, is the SNP the only credible opposition to the current government?
Is the SNP the only real opposition? Alistair Campbell.
Well, the SNP is the government in Scotland. And I think the way that the SNP became the government has lessons for the Labour Party. My real worry about the Labour Party at the moment is that if we're not careful, we can go into, frankly, oblivion. We have no divine right to exist. What's happened, there were times, Joanna and I were talking about this earlier, the Labour Party took Scotland for granted for a long time, for far too long, and we paid a very, very heavy price. And I fear that what's happening at the moment with the Labour Party is that we are not reaching out beyond a fairly narrow core. It's great that Jeremy and John and the rest of them have brought in lots of new people into the party, and there's a lot of energy in there. But I worry that we are losing the things that you need to do, both the policy agenda and the politics, that actually allow you to win general elections.
What are you thinking of in particular?
Well, I think the politics has become, you're right about tearing itself apart. And I think that, in a sense, I'm not saying there's only blame on Jeremy Corbyn, but I do think this whole sort of momentum thing has been incredibly divisive. I think a lot of people in the Labour Party, who've been in the Labour Party for a long time, feel that this is going back to a politics of the 1980s. There's a nastiness in the party which we haven't had since the 1980s. And also, there's always been an element within the Labour Party that prefers having power in the party to winning power in the country. And you need that. That's fine. But you can't have that as the driving force in the party. Now, when I say this, and I guarantee now, the Twitter trolls will be straight in.
Absolutely.
He's obsessed with winning, he's a Tory, da-da-da-da. You get it all the time.
It's nasty.
I'm obsessed with winning because unless we win, the Tories can bring back grammar schools. Unless we win, wouldn't have been able to have things like the minimum wage and Sure Start and devolution to Scotland and peace in Northern Ireland and all the other things that we did. You have to win power in this country. And John talks about building a social movement. Social movements don't deliver the things that a Labour government did and that a Labour government in the future can. So I do want the Labour Party to unite, but it has to unite around something, a policy agenda and politics, that we can actually go to places like this. I can remember we went to Dorset South in 1997, not far from here. And I remember the media saying to us, this is just a stunt. You come into Dorset South, you're never going to win this. We won it, and we held it. Not by being hard left, not by saying anybody who's a Tory is a bad person. We're going to have to get Tories to vote for us. We're going to have to get SNP people to vote for us.
That's how you win.
And that is how we win. Right. And if we don't understand that and act according to that, I'm afraid, I worry genuinely that we're facing oblivion.
John McDonnell.
We have to win. We have to win. No one is arguing that we don't have to win. We have to win elections, and we have to ensure that we have the broadest appeal. And we have to recognise the political times in which we're in. The reason that Jeremy Corbyn got elected leader is because, he reflects a movement, right there across Europe and America as well. People have been through the crash of 2008. People have experienced the austerity over the years and wanted something different. People who wanted a straightforward politics as well, without spin and triangulation.
John, we did straightforward politics.
Let me
it was straightforward.
Let me finish. I think that's what people voted for when they elected Jeremy to be leader of the party. And at that point in time, we'd lost the general election. We were between 7 and 10 points behind in the polls. What then happened is that we won every parliamentary by-election and increased our majorities. We won every mayoral election. We matched Ed Miliband in the local council elections at his highest, and actually we were overtaken.
So you're on course to victory.
Well, let me just...
Well, no, hang on a second. Let's just get to the point.
Let me just finish this point.
These long lists of what you've done.
Let me just finish this point.
All right,
We'd overtaken the Conservatives
Yeah.
in the poll. So we were laying the foundations. We were laying the foundations, I believe, for electoral victory in due course. And we were bringing together the party, left, right and centre. The shadow cabinet that Jeremy appointed was from left, right and
so
centre.
what went wrong? Because, I mean, now you're clearly not in the lead in the polls.
Fair enough. But the lesson that we've got to learn very, very clearly is that people will not vote for a divided party. What happened is that a group of, unfortunately, people within the party weren't willing to accept Jeremy's mandate. They launched what is effectively a coup, and we've gone through a couple of months of, I think, absolute distraction.
But I'm interested in one thing. Do you think that the country as a whole has moved to the left? I mean, you make no bones about saying you're a Marxist. Your reaction to the capitalist crisis. I'm a Marxist. I'm honest with people. Is that what the country as a whole wants? A Marxist, as Chancellor of the Exchequer?
I'm a socialist.
A Marxist are the words you use.
I'm a socialist.
Are you a Marxist?
No, I'm a socialist.
Well, why did you say I'm a Marxist?
Because actually, I was demonstrating a prediction of the capitalist crisis at the time. Anyway,
I'm honest with people. You said I'm a Marxist.
Right,
I didn't want to.
I was predicting what Marx would say in terms of the economic crisis that was coming.
You said, I'm a Marxist.
I was predicting...
You can go on YouTube. I was
predicting what was coming.
You're a very nasty piece of work, and I shall tell you this as well.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. Let me tell you what's happening.
I can finish a sentence.
Can I tell you what's happening in Parliament? Obviously, I don't agree with Labour MPs, but there are a number of Labour MPs who are good and honourable, decent people who believe in things that I don't agree with, but they add value and they are elected. They haven't formed a government, but they're there to do a job. And the job they're there to do is to hold my government to account and to represent those of you who are not Conservatives and make sure that your voice is heard and democracy prevails. And many of these people are frightened, so frightened, humiliated, almost terrorised by Mr McDonnell and his gang. They will leave politics, and that's bad for politics.
Rubbish.
And there is a fine example of it, ladies and gentlemen. You are being let down. As a democracy, we need good, strong oppositions who are credible, who test government, hold them to account.
But sorry, what is your
We're in the position of relying on the SNP to do the job of the opposition.
John McDonnell,
it's shameful.
All right. You said he was a very nasty piece of work.
I think he is.
You may think that. You need to justify it if you say that.
Because there are colleagues of mine in the House of Commons, Labour MPs, who are at the point of being terrorised by McDonnell and his cronies. And they don't stand up to them. There are women MPs who suffer day in and day out from misogynist, unpleasant, sexist abuse on Twitter, on Facebook, from people who apparently are within their own party. There is a Jewish Labour MP, a woman who is living in a safe house because of the levels of anti-Semitism she has to bear. It's a disgrace and it must stop, and you, sir, can stop it.
Alistair Campbell. Alistair, Alistair Campbell, do you recognise that picture? Just before I come to John. I will let you.
You've not allowed me to speak.
I have.
While this abuse has been levelled at me. Let me make this absolutely clear, and we've made it clear time and time again. We will not tolerate abuse within the Labour Party. We've condemned it time and time again. Every time there's been a level of abuse that's been waged, and Jeremy Corbyn has made it absolutely clear, if we've identified the individual, they will be out of this party and suspended. Simple as that. We're not accepting this smear campaign that's going on from the Tories and others as well. We've been working over the last year to unite the party, and we were winning electorally and in the polls. Yes, a coup was launched by a small minority who could not accept Jeremy's mandate. We are a small minority who could not accept the mandate. Jeremy was elected on the basis of 59.5% of our members. We are now going through a democratic election. Once that election is over, whoever is the leader, we will unite behind. And we have been effective opposition in terms of defeating the Tories on tax credits, on PIP, the cuts for disabled people, and a range of others.
What were you saying in the back there? I'll come to you, who was shouting out about MPs? One of you. Was it you in the green shirt? No?
Red jacket.
No, in the red jacket, yes.
It was a minority. There was 80% of the MPs had no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. That's not a minority.
Okay,
It is not a majority.
You heard what Anna Soubry said. Do you recognise anything of that in Labour?
I certainly think, I said earlier that I'm not going to get personal. I said earlier that I think there is a level of nastiness inside the Labour Party at the moment that's really quite upsetting for a lot of people. And it's not necessary, it's not nice. I do think some of it is because there are elements of the old hard left who've always frankly hated the Labour Party, who have now got a big voice within the Labour Party. That's a fact. And that is turning a lot of people off, and I think it's going to turn the public off once they know that that's going on. But I also want to say something about what John said about how this has all come about. Because these members of the shadow cabinet, I don't even see this as a coup. I see this as a group of people who were trying to make something work and who decided over time this isn't working and it's not going to work. Yeah. And I look at what this government is doing. I look at something like Brexit. Now, okay, there's been a referendum. I was, as was Anna, on the losing side. But I know, and I still feel, this is potentially a disaster for the country, and I see no opposition. I don't see the opposition with a strategy.
We have a strategy.
I don't see it.
We have a strategy.
I don't see it. And when John talks about we have to unite, yes, we have to unite, but we have to be clear what we are uniting around.
Well, what's interesting in the leadership debate is that there's been virtually no difference on policy. The most common expression used by Owen Smith is, "I agree with Jeremy." So the issue is not around policy. We've actually turned those arguments around.
I don't agree.
We're an anti-austerity party. We have our red lines in terms of the Brexit campaign, which is unanimously agreed across the Parliamentary Labour Party. And we're campaigning. Well, we're distracted by a leadership election that should never have been brought about.
Joanna Cherry, the question... Joanna Cherry, I'll come to members of the audience in a moment. I just want to hear, the question, of course, was, is the SNP the only credible opposition because Labour's tearing itself apart? Joanna.
I think you have the answer to your question, Olivia. We've just seen Labour tearing itself apart on the panel this evening. I don't care whether John is a Marxist or a socialist. I don't care whether people are nasty to each other or not. We're all grown up and we can cope with a degree of acrimony. What I care about is whether or not the Labour Party is forming an effective opposition to this Conservative government. And it's patently clear they are not. They are simply incapable of doing it. Now, earlier this summer, when we had the result of the European Union referendum campaign, the government were missing in action, but so were the official opposition. The only person who had any sort of a plan or strategy was the SNP's leader, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. Now, you don't have to agree with us, but I think you can agree that she had a plan and she had a strategy, and she's carrying it through. 3 months later, we still don't know what Theresa May's plan is. She says Brexit means Brexit, but she doesn't have any idea what Brexit actually means. The official opposition should be harrying the government over that, cross-examining them, holding them to account for the shambles of lack of policy that they have. Instead, they're fighting amongst themselves like a bunch of student politicians.
This is an SNP.
Jeremy Corbyn doesn't even raise the issue of... That's nonsense, John, and I'll deal with that in a minute.
Austerity.
Well, if you'd let me speak, you had a long time to speak earlier. Jeremy Corbyn seems incapable of asking the Prime Minister about Brexit, the biggest crisis facing this country at the moment. He doesn't want to bring it up, I suspect, because he doesn't really believe in the European Union. It is left to the leader of the SNP at Westminster, my colleague Angus Robertson, to interrogate Theresa May repeatedly about what Brexit means. Does it mean we'll stay in the single market? Does it mean you'll have to pay visas to go on your holidays to Spain and France? Does it mean that passporting for financial services will be taken away, damaging the City of London and the financial sector in the City of Edinburgh, which I represent? She's not able to answer any of these questions, but it's not Labour who are asking her those questions, it's my party.
All right, well, you've made the point.
Well, I want to pick up on what John said.
I want to come to Quentin Letts. Sorry, Quentin Letts.
As you can see, it's quite interesting down in Parliament at the moment, and to be a sketch writer is bliss. I'd say in the House of Commons, the SNP they attend a lot, they talk a heck of a lot, but they are fairly parochial, and they're not listened to that much, I don't think. The Commons is more nuanced than that. There's a lot of opposition to the government on the Tory benches. And there's also, in British public life, their opposition comes from different quarters. It's not just in Parliament. Opposition comes, dare I say it, from the BBC sometimes. It comes from the quangocracy. It comes from the establishment blob. So there is opposition to the government, and just look at the difficulty it's having with the grammar schools proposal. So I think it'd be wrong to say that the SNP is the only opposition. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Jeremy Corbyn on a personal level. But there is this paradox in Labour. Corbyn has a certain... He seems to be quite honest in some ways. He's got a certain lascivious glint in his eye that I quite like. And there is about him with his old steptoe haircut. I think he's an interesting, likeable figure. But at the same time, there is this momentum lot who are pretty unpleasant with their views on Israel and the sort of way they've been treating some of the MPs. I would just give a warning to John. I just went this week, to see A Tale of Two Cities, a production, and that shows you the French Revolution. Fascinating, really good production. But Robespierre, who was a leader of the French Revolution, came unstuck in the end, and he got killed by his own revolutionaries. Let it be a lesson to you, my friend, that if you get in to that sort of extreme revolutionary behaviour, you get the reign of terror. And that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. All right. Now, the reign of terror. I see it in front of me. Who should we go to? The person up there, the man in the pale blue shirt. Yes. You, with spectacles.
Oh, hello.
Yes, hello. Sorry, you've been waiting a bit.
Sorry. I think it is indicative of the state that the Labour Party's in when it takes a Tory MP to defend Labour MPs from abuse from within their own party, and it takes the SNP to actually argue against the Tory MP. I mean, it's quite a scandal that you've got this party which is so divided against itself and seeks to represent ordinary people by doing the work it does. And you've got the point that you've got the point that Quentin Letts made. Jeremy Corbyn went to an event for Labour Friends of Israel, didn't mention the word Israel or Jews once. He just sort of stuck to his spiel.
And you sit in the front here.
My observation is it seems that the Labour Party is moving towards being an organisation of protest and not an organisation with the ability to pursue power and policies through Parliament. And you only need to look at the 80%. If you can't lead, you can't win, you can't achieve anything.
And the first line of our constitution is we exist to be a force in Parliament. Yeah. No. This is why the MPs are so important, the PLP is so important, and they're being sidelined.
Alistair Campbell, does Tony Blair bear the blame, the principal blame for this, because of the obloquy that he now incurs in this country over Iraq and other things and his own private behaviour subsequently? Do you think that the Blair years, your years, that this is what follows because of what they were?
I'll tell you, I certainly don't put everything at the door of Jeremy Corbyn. I think that would be really unfair. I think that there are issues going back to when we were in power, Iraq being the most obvious in terms of policy, but also things like tuition fees, which were very, very difficult for a lot of people. We lost support. But don't forget, David, we won an election after Iraq. And the second thing I would say is that we've always, I think what Tony Blair always tried to do was to understand that most people are not living in the political bubble that we live in. And I think he always had an understanding of that. And I think there's a real danger at the moment that we're losing that. And so I think we focus far too much on, I think the Tony Gordon thing was very damaging. I think it did lead actually to a draining of talent. I think that we didn't bring on talent in the way maybe that we should and could have done. And I think where John is right is to say that a lot of this is about globalisation. I think people do feel absolutely hacked off with inequality, and they're looking for something very, very different. My point is that actually they shouldn't be looking for something that different, take the personalities out of it, to the sort of politics that we tried to give to the country. And I think it's a disaster. Wait a minute, John. I think it's a disaster for the Labour Party. Why is it nauseating?
Because you're the person, above all else, who actually created a political environment where no one believed a word a politician said after a bit.
I don't agree. I'm sorry.
You lost us 5 million votes in that process and set us up to fail.
We won 3 general elections.
Now, the reason Jeremy was elected was because they wanted some honesty back in politics again.
That's fine. You can say it. Look, John, I've come on here tonight to be as nice to you as I possibly can.
So have I. The feeling is mutual.
OK. And I'll tell you why. Because I care about the Labour Party. I really care about the Labour Party. And I worry that you and yours are destroying it. And what's more, I actually worry you don't even
You took us to the edge. We're now rebuilding what we can.
I'll tell you something
We're trying to restore honesty and confidence in politics again that you destroyed.
OK.
You took us to it.
I'll tell you something.
Using Labour
It's just
MPs.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable
MPs.
that we win 3 general elections. We do things like the minimum wage. And all he wants to do...
Which we supported.
I understand...
Which we supported.
Let me say,
and you took us to Iraq.
I understand why newspapers like the Daily Mail want to trash Tony Blair. Because we won elections and they're a right-wing newspaper. I understand why the Tories want to trash New Labour, because we beat them 3 times. But when the Labour Party's doing it, it's utterly ridiculous, and it's part of, I'm afraid, the revolutionary posh boy madness that's taken this party over.
The woman falling from the back. Yes, you.
Unbelievable. You don't deserve to.
Let her speak.
You took us to this crisis.
Personally, I think the problem is with these politicians going at each other like they're 5-year-olds in school, frankly, and then we have this whole stigma surrounded by politics, and young people that are my age won't go and vote because they see these politicians and aren't inspired by them, and they don't believe in them because they're going at each other like they just have nothing to say apart from tiny little digs like Facebook videos of Theresa May who can make the biggest dig at each other. And I just frankly think it's pathetic. But young people are inspired. I personally am inspired by Jeremy Corbyn.
That's good.
Because he is honest.
Right.
Because he doesn't. Because he goes into Parliament. He goes into Parliament in a suit which didn't cost hundreds of thousands, and he didn't claim that money. He didn't claim that taxpayers' money, and he just tells the truth. And I think he is truly inspiring. And for you to make digs at him,
I'm not digging at him. I'm actually sorry, Anna. I'm not making any digs. I actually think Jeremy Corbyn. I agree with Quentin. I think he's got a lot of qualities. And actually, but what I find extraordinary, and I think what you're seeing actually tonight, I think Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party is not necessarily the problem. I desperately want the Labour Party to win a general election.
What's the problem?
The problem is there are elements within the Labour Party who actually don't, because they want the Labour Party to take over.
Not true. It's not
true.
Can I just say something? In the first part of our programme, we debated grammar schools. And I think we had a good debate. Nobody was personal. Nobody was trying to make a cheap political point. I thought that was a genuine debate. So forgive me. I think you're wrong when you say that politicians don't often have good, rigorous debates. And secondly, the idea that my colleagues wear thousands and pounds worth of suits. I don't know where you've got that from.
Because
but
Jeremy
that's
has the
not
smallest
true.
expenses. Jeremy doesn't he have the smallest expenses?
George Osborne did.
It's a small point, I think.
It is a small point.
It's a matter of image.
But it's the basis of a point. You started this whole debate and you went at John.
Oh, I will go for John McDonnell. Yes.
What's interesting now? Well, what's interesting?
I blame, not
this personal abuse I don't tolerate. What's interesting now is that we've got the largest political party in the whole of Europe.
Good.
And it is as a result of large numbers of young people coming into politics, often for the first time.
But it doesn't know what it's
and that was translating into electoral successes until this happened 3 months ago. We will will come back together. We will unite because we agree on the policies. Whoever is the leader will unite behind with discipline, and we will start winning elections again.
Wait. We're going to go on. Alistair Campbell, just one thing. Why do you seem to have it in for John McDonnell, but not in for Jeremy Corbyn?
I don't, because Jeremy, while I was sitting here trying to do my best to be constructive about how the Labour Party might go forward, he suddenly starts going on about how I've lost 5 million votes and that somehow we're the problem. That's what, I don't have it in for him at all.
You don't have it in for
and
each
also,
other.
can I just say one thing?
You're abusing ordinary members of the Labour
It's like from here.
85 out of 89 polls prior to the so-called coup, we were behind.
Yeah.
In the other four, we were neck and neck. So he's just not telling the truth about the polls.
I think viewers can decide for themselves who's got it in for whom as a result of watching this. But I want to go on to another question. We've only got a quarter of an hour, but I'll just take a point from you, madam, there. Yes, in the middle.
I'm sure Jeremy Corbyn is a very nice chap. But honestly, Mr McDonnell, do you really think he can lead the party?
Yes, he can. He's a new type of leader. He's the sort of leader that we now need. Someone who is completely honest, as exactly said, no spin, no triangulation, has been able to unite the party on the policies, because there's no difference on policies, and actually I think he's a type of leader that people will respect. We've had enough of these big leaders who take us elsewhere.
Go on then. All right, one point from you, yes. Man in the grey suit there.
Alistair Campbell's hit the nail on the head. The point is, he designed New Labour. They got elected. All right, it was a disaster, but they got elected.
Oh, excuse me.
You will never.
When you win 3 times.
But we're still living with your legacies, unfortunately.
This is your opposition.
You want us to elect a disastrous administration?
But I'm old enough to remember the dark ages of the Labour Party in the early 80s, which unfortunately the young people don't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where we're going back. And as for the SNP being a credible opposition, let's just remind ourselves, they've got 56 seats with 1.4 million votes. And a system that allows that is something that needs to be changed.
OK, we're getting on. All right. John, stop a second. What do you want to come back on?
I'd like to come back on the gentleman's point in the audience.
Which point?
The point that's just been made, that somehow the SNP aren't legitimate. The SNP government in Scotland has the highest popular mandate of any government in Western Europe. This lot, with their infighting, their dividedness, are never going to achieve anything like that.
You're a product of the system, nothing more.